Everybody, this is one of my old friends, Jeremy Jones. He is here to talk about Qigong. We're a couple minutes early, so I'm gonna let people just kind of filter in here, okay? So just take your time. As you guys come in, make sure that you are saying who you are, where you're from. Maybe if you already have a question about Qigong, go ahead and throw it in there. We hope to be able to get around to all of the questions. Sometimes there just get to be so many that we can't, but we are going to do our darndest to do that. So I am going to start sharing this into different groups. But Jeremy, if you want to go ahead and just let people know who you are and really what Qigong is, and yeah, just take it away.
Well, my name's Jeremy Jones. I've been a longtime practitioner of Qigong. I was introduced through my martial arts instructor originally. Although it wasn't really part of our regular curriculum, he kind of fed my interest. A lot of times Qigong in terms of martial arts is taught generally in what they call internal arts, which encompasses like most people are familiar with Tai Chi Chuan, also Xingyi Chuan and Bagua Zhang, which are two that I train. It has been long practiced for health benefits as well as strengthening in martial arts training. As far as like historical development, there have been a couple of legends that I've been told, and I can only relay what my teacher has taught me. So one was that the Yellow Emperor, who is pretty much known for inventing Chinese medicine altogether, was considered one of the founders, as well as the Bodhidharma from India was said to have brought them to the Buddhist monks in China, who were, in his mind, out of shape and lackadaisical in their lifestyle. So some Qigong was done with just standing position, doing, focus on breathing. Others have more intricate movements that vary in terms of high impact versus low impact type exercise.
Heck yeah, my goodness. Like, okay, so what would you say, because people are just starting to come in. Hey, Val, I see you there. Looks like we have a number of people. As you guys are joining, just go ahead and say who you are, where you're from. If you have any questions in specific about Qigong, that's what we're talking about today. So, Jeremy, what did it do in specific for you? What was your before and after that Qigong really did for you?
Well, I'll actually give you not only mine, but one of our friends as well. I'll start with our friend Will Norris. He had... I'm
going to tag him in here.
Sure. He had injured his shoulder during weight training. And I got a call from him asking if there was anything I could do for it. And I took a look. And it started out treating it with Shiatsu, which is also based on a lot of the same principles that Qigong is rooted in. But one of the things I also did, and he is such a good patient when it comes to following instructions, that it was super simple to get him back on his feet in no time by doing some of the simple Qigong exercises and stretching, where he wasn't very confident in his ability to really push weight and thought the injury was way worse than it was. He actually bounced back really fast.
Wow.
And I believe he said faster than he even expected. For me, it was a little more intense because I was actually born with extra bone in my hip towards the femur. And a lot of years of martial arts put a lot of wear and tear on my labrum, which is right in that hip socket. The bone would just smash into the socket, and besides just obnoxious amounts of pain, it was really hindering my ability to move.
Yeah.
And I also have a rheumatic disease in both knees that had spread pretty good. One of the things that the doctor had said was that my situation would have been far worse if it wasn't for the Bagua and Qigong training that I had been doing. Because in Bagua, we use a lot of coiling movements, including in the Qigong training that we do, which gives a greater range of motion. So, one of the things I hear from, say, older folks is, I wish I really would have moved more or managed to keep my energy up. And that's why a lot of times you're seeing a lot of these folks get into Qigong now as more of a preventative measure.
You're okay. You can keep talking. It's just my video. I'm still
rather
here.
than something that you do after the fact. That's how the doctor saw it with me. He saw it as, well, you've been doing all this preventative care by engaging in these types of practices, not just as a once in a while thing, but as a lifestyle. Because, training in martial arts is, if you're serious about it, is a lifestyle. And that includes the health and wellness portion of it too, which unfortunately doesn't get emphasized on enough. But I tell people, I could probably not be walking right now just from the amount of pain I was in, had it not been, having the foresight to say, okay, this is going to help me just walking down the street. This will help me doing my martial arts training. This will help me, increase circulation. This will help me, when I'm having trouble sleeping, I started doing these things well in advance to tackle these problems before they became problems. And a lot of times people who get engaged in type of health and wellness, whether it's going to the gym or taking up yoga or any other practice, a lot of times, one, they underestimate how diligent you have to be. It's
Right.
not an overnight success, but also that, like I said, preventative care will go a long way to avoid having a lot of issues when you're older. Whether I have a lot of students that I worked with that started in their 20s because they're like, okay, I would rather avoid these things happening well in advance, but it's also still good for those that are, in their 40s like me or, even older, to take it up as a practice because, eventually as one of my teachers used to say, your muscle strength might diminish, but your muscle endurance still is there. And a lot of Qigong works on muscle endurance as well versus muscle strength. You have ones that are more meditative in practice. So if you're dealing with a lot of anxiety, it's been shown that Qigong can lower the cortisol levels, which are really stirring stress. So it goes a long way for overall well-being rather than just this mindset of, well, it's only a martial arts thing, or it's this weird thing that Chinese people do in the park, which is something I often hear. I said, if you understood the benefits of it, you would take the time because you only need to dedicate really 20 minutes a day to get a lot of the benefits. If you can do more, that's awesome. But, there are some that they, like I said, what they call internal elixir, that is more the in-depth type stuff. Whereas the external elixir is more the physical embodiment with the breathing. And it really goes a long way. Like I said, there was a point where I probably wouldn't have been even moving around that well at all had it not been, well, this was part of my daily practice anyway. So for me, it was just natural to do it. And the doctors are like, man, this could have been so much worse. The damage could have been so more intense had you not been doing this already. I've shown them video and pictures of stuff because unfortunately, in the United States, usually Qigong's not that well researched, except by people that are actually, hardcore into it. So a lot of the benefits don't reach people, in a more mainstream fashion. When I talk to people that do Tai Chi and I see them doing Qigong in the park, well, they were like, well, that's just my Tai Chi. Well, it's not separated from, but it is something, aside from combat, that never got a lot of emphasis. A lot of the people I trained with, they didn't have an interest in it. So it was up to me on my private time to say, okay, hey, could you show me how this works or explain how this works for me and what it's going to do for my health long term. Right. And I learned a lot of amazing things about what Qigong could accomplish. Like I said, everything from, stress levels to, like I said, keeping you moving. A lot of people deal with arthritis. Qigong goes a long way. It's not going to like completely wipe out your pain, but it definitely diminishes it. Because there's only so much you can do. But one of the things too, like I said earlier about circulation, they had a saying, yi controls qi, which means mind controls the energy. Mm-hmm. And where the energy goes, blood flows. So a lot of times how I apply what I did in Qigong to my Shiatsu practice is stagnation in that circulation can cause a number of health issues. Mm-hmm. And that's what we work to do both in Qigong as well as in my Shiatsu practice, is to break up those stagnations and get yourself back to more of an optimal health.
Yeah. So okay, I'm just going to stutter my way through this. I had 2 questions that came up. The first one I'm going to ask because I feel like people are wondering, what is the difference then between Tai Chi and Qigong?
Okay. Tai Chi is the martial art itself. Qigong is actually practiced in more than just Tai Chi. Tai Chi is one of the 3 sister arts that were said to have come from the Wu-Tang Mountains in China. Tai Chi Chuan translates to supreme ultimate boxing.
Oh, okay.
Xingyi Chuan is shape, mind, intent, fist, which is one of the arts that I do. The other one is Bagua Zhang, which is the 8 trigrams palm. Now, each of those 3 also has their own Qigong practice. Qigong just means to cultivate life energy or just energy work, if you want to simplify it. There are even other countries and even other martial arts in other countries that have their own version. They may not call it the same thing because they may not run on the same principles, but the practice itself is very, very similar. So, even basic meditation is very similar in some respects to Qigong. Like I said, some people get attracted to Qigong that just have trouble sitting for long periods. When I started meditation, I couldn't sit for long periods of time. It would drive me crazy. Yeah. So they put me in a position of doing movements where I would synchronize the breathing, and then my focus would come right back to where it should be. Like I said, the application of Tai Chi has combat in it. Qigong is strictly for a health exercise.
Yeah. Okay. There was something I was thinking. So because with Qigong, like people are able to sort of be able to, they're moving their own energy bodies, right? So they're sort of moving through like those stagnations that you were referring to. So it feels to me like it's some sort of action-based Reiki, like a self-Reiki, like an action-based self-Reiki. I'm just trying to make it make sense to people if they don't, like, if they're having some sort of mental block and understanding. Like
see, I'm not that hip to I've only known a couple of Reiki practitioners, so I'm not that in-depth into it in terms of knowledge base. But a lot of people could equate it to the same principles used in acupuncture, if you've ever had acupuncture done.
Okay.
They're all on the same traditional Chinese medicine based on the same theories. So like I said, Shiatsu, albeit from Japan, also runs off a lot of those same principles as well. Moxibustion therapy, which is one that I also do, runs off the same principles. So it's really kind of hard for me to equate it in the sense of whether it's exactly like Reiki, but it is definitely energy work in the same sense that Reiki is.
Yeah.
With some of them more, I've seen people who could do some pretty wondrous things with their training, both from a martial arts standpoint as well as, because I remember seeing like a group of traveling monks where they were, not just doing the breaking of the bricks and stuff, but they would like do things that would normally just cause damage to the body. They would like press spears into their skin and, wouldn't even break, and they attribute it to their Qigong training, but also their ability to slow their breathing down. They have very, very just unbelievable breath control. I've also seen people that used similar techniques to sit in tubs of ice and just melt the ice. They would just keep shoveling ice into the tub. because you can generate heat in Qigong training.
Yeah.
That's one of the few things that I always tell people. I try not to dictate what it feels like, because it's going to be different for everybody. You know, how one describes it's going to be totally up to that person. But one consistent is, you know, I feel my body temperature rise, you know, the more I focus and the more I feel it going towards the biological center of the Tantien. They're like, man, I feel that spot getting really, really warm. And that's what you're looking for. You know, that's when you know you're really headed in the right direction.
Yeah. Well, Usui Reiki is, there's a couple different Reikis, but Usui Reiki is, I mean, it's holy fire Reiki. It's that same, whenever I even talk about Reiki, I get really hot. It's that intention, right? It's
Absolutely.
It's what you're thinking about. Somebody asked something. Let me get,
and I've seen it a lot of times, a lot of similarities in some yoga practice as well.
Oh yeah. We've got Sarah saying a lot of stuff. Hey, Sarah. She said the breath as well. And I'm sorry, Sarah, I didn't see when you said this, so I'm not sure what it's referring to, but she said spirit energy is the ultimate healer. That's what I think we work. I think we all would agree. Anybody watching this would agree that we all work with divine, whatever you want to call divine, right? We all work with that same energy, and it's the it's what we use, right? It's what we are. So
absolutely.
Then Sarah said yin and yang, peaceful and assertive, 1% physical, 99% metaphysical in my experience, and Kabbalah teachings, unity. Yeah, that's awesome. What drew you to this? I'm going to say the whole lifestyle, because I know everybody that's just joining, Jeremy and I have been friends for years. And we have known each other through a lot of phases.
That is very true.
Right? So growth, the journey.
Yeah.
So because I know that you do practice Buddhism also, right? What kind of brought you on to this whole path, like the path that you're on right now?
Well, I would about say almost 17 years ago, actually by pure accident. And I mean that in the literal sense, because I was starting training in a Chinese system called Wing Chun Gung Fu. And during training, by complete accident, one of the students had dislocated my shoulder. And my instructor, Steve Fristo, walked over, popped my shoulder back in, and he hit these points in my arm, and the pain was gone. Now I still had problems moving, you know, because there was a structural injury there. But I was blown away. I was like, what the blazes did he just do? This is cool. And I made it through another 4 hours of training right after. So after we got done, I asked him, I said, you know, what is that you did? And he was explaining the Shiatsu premise to me. And he says, you know, we also do this other stuff that benefits the health too. I just don't do it as much because people don't, you know, it's not a general consensus that everybody wants to do it. But, you know, I can show you, you know, what ended up being Qigong from Tai Chi. And I remember because at the time I was running kind of low energy from just, you know, work, you know, plus I was going to school. And I said, man, I'm really kind of dragging. And he says, you know, I got this thing that's better than coffee. You got to try this out. And I was like, okay, you know, a little skeptical. And sure enough, it worked out pretty good. It felt like your body just got kind of re-energized. And I said, man, this is really cool. Can we get more into this? And, you know, he'd give me bits and pieces when either somebody didn't show up to class or whatever, that we had an extra, you know, hour or so. He would take me through these exercises. Well, one of the arts I wanted to learn for years and years was Bagua Zhang. And it's similar to Tai Chi, but very circular, and a lot of coiling to its motions. And by sheer happenstance, I was up in Wisconsin training with the Filipino martial arts group I train with now, and one of the instructors that had come with we were sitting there chatting, and he says, so, is there any arts that you've always wanted to do? And I said, I wanted to do Bagua. And he goes, I happen to teach that. And I said, really? And he says, well, I get in real in depth with the Qigong stuff. We do a lot of advanced Qigong work. And I said, perfect. I wanted to kind of delve into that more anyway. And, around the same time that I was training with Sifu Fristo, I had started getting more into meditation. Because once again, my stress levels were pretty high from just, running like crazy. And so I forget the name of the church he pointed out to me that did Buddhist meditation, like in the evenings. But I ended up going to a couple, and I thought it was really cool. And I just had a hard time wrapping my head around the teachings until I read a book by a guy named Noah Levine called Dharma Punks. And it really resonated with me because a lot of what he was talking about that he experienced growing up, I could definitely relate to. And it was talking about all the things that had changed for the positive in his life once he started getting into Buddhist meditation. So I started asking more and more questions and pointing into the right directions, thankfully, and kind of just took off with it. And a lot of times I spend more time doing moving Qigong than sitting meditation, but they accomplish a lot of the same goals. As a matter of fact, it's really weird because it used to be when I first started, I would count how many repetitions I would do. Now I just don't care. There was always kind of the joke that they would say, okay, I'd ask how many times you want me to do this. And they would say, do it 1,000 times. And it was their way of just saying, don't keep count. Well, now I don't even bother. Now I'm like, man, my alarm just went off. I need 5 more minutes of this because I'm really digging on what I'm doing. And once that really started taking an effect in terms of seeing the positives happening in life, I'm like, why am I not doing this every day? And then it became an everyday thing. And now it feels weird when I don't do it. It feels slightly off when I miss a day or so, because like I said, really you only need to put in, especially in the beginning, 20 minutes. Then as you become more acclimated, you can feel more of these changes happening. Then you go, okay, I want to do it longer. It's not like getting up and going, oh, I got to go jogging, or, oh, I got to hit the gym. You're like, I can do this anywhere I want, whether I want to, need to be inside during the winter, or, it's a beautiful day, I want to go out to the park. You can do it any place you want, at the office. I had students that used to do theirs on their lunch break at work. Either like something that was sitting like the microcosmic orbit, or something that they were doing more moving, like the big regulation Qigong, or something more in depth, like one of the ones we do, Taoist 5 Yin, gets pretty for people that like to be challenged. So there's something there for everybody, which is what also made it cool, because I said, okay, this is something I could see myself doing in my 60s, in my 70s, till the end of my days, and still feel this good every time. Because we bombard ourselves with a lot of nonsense day in and day out, and whether we overwork ourselves or we just, get aggravated with people or whatever, it's always great to bring it back into the moment, and a lot of times, like I said, some people can't do that just sitting. I had a lot of friends that were really hardcore about trying Buddhist meditation, but once they got started, they're like, my mind just won't stop wandering. And I said, well, if you're doing something, then you don't have to worry about it, because you're going to be too focused on what you're doing to really let it be a distraction. So we would start doing moving stuff. One of the ones I like to teach is called the 8 Walking Palms Qigong. And people really like that one because you still have to focus on the breathing and in terms of coordinating it with the movements, but your thoughts are only on that. They were like, man, when I would do sitting meditation, my brain would be thinking, oh, what do I got to get from the store? What time do I got to pick up the kid, type stuff. And they said, in this, all I was thinking about was the walking and the breathing. you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the things that has always made it kind of the lifelong practice that it's been, is that it's so adaptable to the person and your needs day to day, rather than having a one size fits all mentality.
Yeah.
And that's kind of one of the beautiful things about the practice, is the more in depth I've gotten into it, the more you can specify towards, like, say, if you're coming down with a cold,
Mm-hmm.
well, I know this Qigong helps. Or I have, heartburn, this Qigong helps. This specific exercise helps this, or this specific exercise helps that condition. So it really goes a long way once you get into it, in terms of making it a daily practice where you can model it around your needs that day, rather than, okay, here's hoping this condition comes up, so I get the benefit.
Right. So when again, there are two things that I love there. First thing I'm just going to say that I love is um, just the idea, because there are people out there that say that you have to meditate in a certain kind of way, and there are rules and yada yada. And that might be fine for some people, but for the people out there that just feel like you can't do that, but you really want to meditate, but you just are having the hardest time, understand that everybody doesn't have to do things the same way. And I love Qigong and how you're describing it, because not only are you getting sort of the physical benefit of, and it does sound like self-Reiki a lot, like the moving of the energy.
Sure.
So you're getting the benefit of that, but then also you're able to, download, right? You're able to actually meditate and get the messages and things like that, both at the same time. And then you're getting the benefit of not feeling older, right? So, I mean,
not at all.
right. So go
I
ahead.
never considered myself, like, say, for example, I still don't consider myself that flexible of a person, but considering the number of injuries that I've had over the years, I always get told that I move exceptionally well, especially for, I'm no small guy, to begin with. So when people are like, man, you get really low to the ground when you do this posture or this or that, that's amazing. And I'm like, no, it's just, practice. I don't even think about it anymore. It wasn't even really that difficult to begin with, because it was such a gradual process. And that kind of goes to the beauty of what you were saying about it not being just one way, or it being done in one particular fashion, because there's a lot of stuff, especially when my hip was really messed up. I couldn't sit at all. The position wasn't good for it. But I could sit upright for little more periods of time. So I did what they called microcosmic orbit, which was guiding chi around the two main vessels that divide the body in half.
Okay.
And I still got benefit from that. Is it the same as getting up and moving around like I was before? No, but it was adaptable.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, it makes it so there's something there for everyone. I was always told that the traditional Chinese medicine approach was about the individual anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of like the criticism of Western medicine as a whole, is, this pill is supposed to work for everybody the same. Well, if that was true, then you wouldn't have to need a disclaimer for side effects, or, and that's not how stuff works, and I get it. You're trying to help millions, at one time. And that's kind of actually one of the criticisms of Chinese medicine, is that it's not good for epidemics or pandemics, because you can't treat people fast enough. But in terms of preventative care,
Right.
People's are different sizes. People are, different schedules. People are different in their eating, so on and so forth. So you want something that can work with all of those differences, and not something that, because you're just going to simply turn people away if you go, well, it has to be specifically this way or not at all. Well, then nobody's going to try it, because they're going to be like, it's a waste of my time. If it's not going to work for me, it's not going to work for me. Whereas, you know, when people come and talk to me about it, you know, I had friends that deal with depression, and I said, well, these help out with anxiety. These particular exercises help with anxiety. You know, he calls me back and says, man, way better. He says, it's not entirely gone, you know, but he says, I deal with it better. You know, I have something to focus on more. Like I said, I have friends that are older than I am that struggle to move, that are moving way better now. I had people that were in car accidents that suffered injuries that are definitely benefiting from improved mobility from that type of training, and it's not so intense as to cause pain. I mean, you still have to use good judgment, but it's not so high impact that you're like, man, this is going to take me forever to get back on my feet. This is excruciating. You know, after my hip surgery, because they what they did is reshape the bone. They just did it, reshaped it, popped it back in. And the doc says to me, he goes, now don't think about it in terms of your knee surgery where you're going to be back on your feet running around in a matter of, you know, a couple of days. Well, my son was born 2 days later. So, you know, the hospital rooms are not big. So, you know, I was out there walking without my crutches just 2 days after having, you know, what, you know, was essentially hip reconstruction. So it says a lot about what it can do in terms of boosted healing. Like I said, you know, using the breathing to help with the pain. You know, there's these little things that people take for granted that can be done to save you a lot of wear and tear later, you know, or just to simply bounce back. You know, one of the things that I often talked about when I would discuss Qigong with medical assisting students is guys, unfortunately, are just taught to play through the pain. It's just how we are. You know, my grandparents, they were old school like that. It didn't matter if you slipped a disc, you were right back to doing what you were doing, you know, minutes later, you know, and they paid a price for it. You know, I remember looking at my grandparents before they passed on and seeing the wear and tear catch up with them because they didn't take time for anything else. They, you know, and their last years were pretty rough, you know, and I said to myself, you know, and even my grandparents admitted had they got into something like what I was doing prior to things getting out of control, it would have probably been an easier life for them as well. But I looked at them and said, no, I'm not doing that to myself. You know, like I said, we bombard ourselves with nonsense every day. Why make it worse? And most importantly, for those that are trying to help others, why put a hurdle in front of you? You know, I had just gotten done with Shiatsu training for self-care. And it was kind of funny because I caught myself not taking my own advice, you know. I'm like, wow, you know, I haven't done this in a while, where I just kind of, you know, focused on me for a moment. But if I didn't, how am I helping anybody else? You know, if I'm not getting the energy right in myself, how am I going to get it right for anybody else?
Exactly.
And, you know, like I said, it goes a long way from not just that self-care, but like I said, in Will's case, it got him back to, you know, working out faster. I had a young kid, I used the same principles, which they use in moxibustion therapy as well, to help him with his osteonecrosis. You know, he was wanting to be able to walk down the aisle for his wedding. You know, so I gave him some base, and he was a young kid. He was a collegiate soccer player before his bone graft didn't take. And I said, what do you want to do? I said, I can work wonders. I can't do miracles. However, you know, I said, give me a goal to shoot for. And the kid said, well, I want to be able to walk down the aisle for my wedding. That's it, without crutches. So I got him to doing some basic movements, you know, using the breath control to kind of not just, you know, focus the healing energy where the injury is at, but also to kind of run the circulation through, like flushing, you know.
Right. Yeah.
And then I used moxa, which is Chinese mugwort. Usually you burn it on ginger root to get everything kind of seeped into the acupuncture points. In this case, I did what they call a pecking method with smokeless, because I was in a chiropractic clinic with no ventilation. So
they didn't want you to burn stuff in there?
no, it's a disaster if you do. So I started using that to really draw the blood, because I figured it this way, and I'm oversimplifying my outlook on this. I figured if I can nourish the tissue enough, at least the deterioration would slow. Yeah. And I said, and like I said, I'm very oversimplifying that, but I said, this should help on top of everything else you're getting done. He was getting active release technique done, as well as other chiropractic work, and so on and so forth. And I get a call from Georgia probably 2 months after his last visit, and he says, I want to tell you thanks. I actually made it down the aisle without the crutches. Oh. And I said, that's fantastic, man. You made it to your goal, at least, And, a lot of people, because a lot of people that have trouble wrapping their head around traditional Chinese medicine oftentimes kind of blow it off. And mm-hmm. It's, as some of my friends used to call it, Chinese voodoo. They didn't know how it worked. They just know it worked, right. Kind of thing. But that doesn't really kind of help reach more people. So I try to really simplify it for the people in my community to hopefully get them to see not just the preventative side, not just the injury recovery side, but just the overall well-being that can be improved through Qigong training.
Awesome. Well, you're doing an awesome job. How are people able to, people are just loving this. I want people to be able to reach out to you, because we have to wrap up. I'm sorry, guys. We are here for a half hour. But how are they able to actually reach out to you if they have questions, if they want to work with you, whatever? How can they reach out to you?
The two best ways to get in touch with me, we do have a Facebook page. It's C-U Martial Arts for Champaign-Urbana Martial Arts.
Okay.
Also, email is subliminalkid75@gmail.com. I'm usually quicker to answer those than I am anything else, unfortunately. So that's about the best way to get a hold of me.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you, Martha.
It's been fun, man. It's been fun. What a journey. What a trip it has been, friend. Everybody out there that is watching right now, thank you so much. Have an awesome day. Hit Jeremy up if you have any questions, and yeah, have a good, happy holidays, right? I think I can say happy holidays now.
Yep, fantastic.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Take care.